Up next, Authentically Detroit welcomes Deputy Director for Prosperity for the Michigan Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity, Kim Trent, to discuss her work guiding and building support for efforts to boost the economic security of Michigan citizens. But first, our segment with Alex B. Hill of Detroitography, Detroit by the Numbers. Keep it locked. Authentically Detroit starts after these messages.
Calling all residents and lovers of the East Side, the Spring Stoudemire Showcase on April 16th is your invitation to come in, get connected, and discover all that the Stoudemire Wellness Hub offers for Eastsiders. Experience the space, meet staff and instructors, and learn more about programs designed to support everyday life. Whether you're looking for health and wellness resources, opportunities for your children and family, or ways to stay connected and engaged in the community, join us on April 16th and see why the Stoudemire is the place to be.
What's up, Detroit? Welcome to another episode of Authentically Detroit, broadcasting live from Detroit's east side of the Stoudemire, inside of the East Side Community Network. I'm Sam Robinson.
And I'm Donna Davidson.
Thank you so much for listening in and supporting our efforts to build a platform of authentic voices for real people here in the city of Detroit. We want you to like, rate, and subscribe to our podcast on all platforms. Today, we're joined by Donna's good friend and also the woman leading Michigan's Poverty Task Force, Kim Trent. We also have Alex B. Hill of Detroitography on the line for our monthly segment, Detroit by the Numbers. Kim, thank you for joining us. Welcome to Authentically Detroit. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you, Sam. And you know what? You said that in the exact right order, that I am Donna's good friend first. Because being her good friend has really helped inform my work with the Poverty Task Force because I mean, you know this from being around her, how brilliant she is, how innovative she is, how she always knows the latest stuff. So it has been such a blessing to have her as a friend in this work.
And, you know, being the introverted nerd that I am, it is such a blessing to have Kim as my friend. Kim, you are just an amazing person in your own right. And so we're so happy. I remember when the post for the Poverty Task Force was put up. And remember some of the controversy about who's going to get that work. And we needed somebody like you to really shepherd us through and bring people together, getting people from so many different departments to really think through how can we address poverty holistically and not through slogans.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I think that when it is such a huge responsibility. I mean, and it's a little intimidating when you're told that, the governor wants you to lead the work of combining 14 state departments, directors, bringing them to the table, having them work collaboratively. You know, in the Bible, it says the poor will always be with you. And there are so many people who are satisfied with that. Like, that's just going to be a part of our existence. But to change the conversation so that people understand we don't have to have poverty in our country. It's a choice. It's a political choice. It's a policy choice.
Yeah.
And we are doubling down on poverty in our country right now on the federal level. And unfortunately, those decisions are being pushed to the state and local level as well. So those of us who are in the fight to continue to say, we don't have to have poverty. Yeah. Poverty is not inevitable. It's a choice. And so, obviously we still have poverty. I wish I could say 6 years later, no poverty in Michigan. Certainly, we still have too many Michiganders who are struggling. But it's revolutionary to even say the word poverty as a policy priority.
I cannot wait to get in that with you because I remember when you couldn't even say the word poverty because it was a bad word.
Oh, yeah.
You couldn't call
everything was middle class.
Or low income. Or low income.
Yes. Oh, right. That's true.
We had low income people and middle class. That's all we had. So I can't wait for that conversation.
Yeah. One of that, part of that fight is empowering people with good information. One person that does that really well is Alex B. Hill. We have him on the line of Detroitography for our monthly segment, Detroit by the Numbers, where we highlight significant data and numbers from the past month for Detroiters. Here, Alex Hill of Detroitography and the chairperson of the City of Detroit's Go Data Commission. The Go Data Commissioners are a diverse group of stakeholders, including data experts, community leaders, and representatives from various sectors. This commission is dedicated to ensuring that the city's open data initiatives serve the needs of all residents and promote informed decision making. Sometimes there are numbers and data points in the news, but it's hard to know the context behind them. So, Alex, talk to us about what numbers you have for us this month.
Let's do it. So the first number I've got, and these are numbers from March, is 2,000. And that's the number of tree plantings that are planned by the city of Detroit for this spring. And although that sounds like a big number, Detroit has had a pretty significant tree canopy loss, largely from the Dutch elm disease, and then just other causes that have created a loss of our street trees.
Yeah.
At one point, we had 400,000 Dutch elm trees. So we have a long way to go to get back from that time.
Mary talks
we were
about
known as this.
Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah. I was going to say, at that time we were known as the city of trees, for good reason, because we had hundreds of thousands of street trees.
Yeah. Mary Sheffield just last month did a announcement in a city neighborhood street about street lights. One thing that I hope to be a part of my street to get more mid-street lights. We need more mid-street trees because I can go back on the Google Maps and see, the years that these trees have been removed. Some people in their front, across from their sidewalk, they'll have the little baby trees planted, and you can tell why. Does anybody know why a lot of the trees in the mid 2010s got?
Well, yeah, I mean, there are a couple things. First of all, trees get diseased.
Yeah.
And so when you have a diseased tree, you have to kill it. I mean, you have to take it down and replace it. And so you have a lack of tree replacement. You have to be really honest, though. There's a lot of Detroiters who are used to dead trees being a nuisance. Dead trees on the roof or in their backyard, and they can't get the dead trees removed. And so when you start talking about planting new trees, you get resistance. When you plant a new tree, you have to take care of it. And my question about these trees is, do you remember Hance Woodlands? I remember I was so excited. There are all these trees being planted. And so I was on my bike and on a bike ride with Plymouth Church. And we stopped by Hance Woodlands. And I'm looking up and it just looked like little sprigs sticking up from the ground. I was like, are you kidding me? They will one day be trees. And now they are. 12 years later, they are trees. Yeah. But the question I have is, are we going to plant trees or sprigs? Because we know one costs a lot less than the other. And the canopy we need has to be accelerated. Trees aren't just, pretty. And I think trees are beautiful. My mother loved trees. And so being Shirley's girl, I always appreciated the beauty of trees. And trees provide canopy. And we'll be talking about the mother tree design for our for the Angela Brown Wilson Gardens. So that's what trees mean to me. But trees also protect from environmental harm. They absorb toxins in the air, and they provide cover to shelter people from the hot sun so that, in some communities, like in neighborhoods without trees, you have really high levels of heat islands. If you want to figure out what wealth looks like in Detroit, look at an aerial map and look where the tree cover is. And those are going to be the wealthiest, most stable areas of the city.
Yeah, I got a tree right in front of my house, but my neighbors all down the street have the little baby trees that have been planted in the last 5 or 10 years. And you can see, as I mentioned, you can see there's all these neighborhoods used to have trees. You just saw this morning on Twitter. Did you, Alex, see that side-by-side photo of Belle Isle from 1950 to now, and just the lack of density?
Oh yeah,
yeah, you saw that. Yeah, I mean, it is amazing. And yes, Donna, you make a good point in which there is somehow resistance because people feel like, tree's going to grow and then it's going to grow into my house.
Well, I mean, there's reality.
Yeah.
We talked to a lot of residents whose chief complaint is, I can't get my dead tree removed. Speaking of Mayor Sheffield, she announced that she was going to fix all the broken sidewalks all through the city of Detroit. And, not too long ago, we had a mayor who said, we can't afford to fix broken sidewalks. We'll talk more about that state of the city. I know that's not planned here. But, it's important to me that we talk about removing all the dead trees because dead trees don't provide the benefits of live trees.
Right.
And we can't get community support. The other thing is making sure that we're planting the right kind of trees for this environment. And the other thing is making sure that the tree health is good enough that they don't just die on you because our late great Angela Brown Wilson talked to me about trees that were planted on her block to replace some of the trees that died. And the trees that were planted there died as well. So let's make sure that we're getting healthy trees and it's the right tree selection for this climate and on these blocks.
Yeah. Alex, you have another notable number. A lot of people across the city have been sending me Twitter or Instagram messages, text messages that they have my number. Hey, Sam, there's another ICE arrest happening. You have the number that this advocacy group says happened in the last week of March.
Yeah, and this is just for the last week of March. They kept track of 25 ICE arrests, and there's no good numbers. Obviously, the federal government is not reporting their numbers, but if we take that as a standard for a week, that's 100 Detroiters who were arrested by ICE in the last month potentially, and maybe that's a underestimate, maybe it's an overestimate. But I think this is, an area where I think I also just saw a story of another Detroit high school student was arrested by ICE. So, really hoping that we see some kind of city response to keep our residents safe.
Yeah.
And it is interesting when you talk about the number of people deported. Obviously, when we talk about, this topic, a lot of people will say, well, Obama deported more people than any other president ever. But we've also taken the reported numbers for a grain of salt. I think even more now, there's an open question about the politics that go into this reporting of how many people are being arrested by Department of Homeland Security units. Not really any sense from the Trump administration if we're going to ever get an accurate number on that.
Well, if Obama was doing all this deportation, he was doing more than Trump. Why are they building all these warehouses all over the United States if nothing has changed? You never heard about people going into high schools and daycare centers and courts and churches and trying to arrest people. There's no holds barred. And, the scary part of it is that the people most likely to be arrested still are people who are stopped for traffic offenses, and those are most often to be Black immigrants than any other group of people, but we think it's a Hispanic thing. The challenge is that we have these narratives and these images of the people who are being deported, but we're not disaggregating these numbers by where they're being taken from and what the people look like. I think if people understood that they also had faced a risk factor, maybe we'd have more people up in arms. But because we think of it as a Southwest Detroit thing, and it's not all happening in Southwest Detroit, we get to not care. I mean, and it wouldn't matter to me if they were all Mexican. It wouldn't matter to me if they were all Venezuelan because human beings have rights. And I'm so glad we're going to talk to our friend Kim about this. So it pains me, but what also pains me is hearing my sisters, my friends say things like, well, it's their fault. They should not have voted for Trump, as though undocumented immigrants were at the polls voting. The other thing is the escalation of things like arresting people while they're waiting for green cards, arresting people and deporting people while they have work permits in the United States, simply because they are not citizens. You cannot compare this to what Obama did, although you hear people trying to minimize it. And so my only question is this. If Obama was doing all this, why do we have all these new ICE officers? And why are we building these facilities? And who's going into these facilities? But that's a scary conversation.
It is. Alex, you have another number. It's a scary big number.
That's a great big number.
Yeah. Tell us more.
Yeah, $3 billion. And that's the balanced budget proposal that was presented by Mayor Mary Sheffield March 9th. That's on par though with the way city budgets have been presented in the past. Although whenever I mention them, or people are always surprised, and so I think it's helpful for folks to know the kind of level that the Detroit city budget is at, to provide for all the departments and services that go into running city government.
That's $3 billion, paying every single full-time city worker a living wage, increasing pay of bus drivers to equivalent to the suburbs, fixing all the sidewalks, putting streets in mid-block. What it shows, if she could do this and create a balanced budget with this, and I know there's going to be some, negotiation with city council, there always is. But if she could do this with that balanced budget, why couldn't her predecessor do some of the same things? So I was at the State of the City last week, and it was, oh my goodness, it was great because partly just because the Black National Anthem was so beautiful. I was like, who is that woman singing that? I mean, girlfriend could sing, but listening to very practical, detailed description of things that are going to be done is something that I'm not used to hearing. It felt very close to home. And so not only is it balanced, but it felt good. And I actually think most of the city council members that I talked to that night also were feeling very good about that. So it's a good number and it's balanced.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, as you said, there are so many wonderful carve outs for these people programs that are really gonna I think have big impacts for city residents.
Yeah. Okay, I can't wait to talk to this about this next number.
Yeah. So last number I've got for March is 65%. And that's the number of Detroit landlords that have a Detroit address. I don't know the caveats there, if that just means their LLC has a Detroit address or them. But there's this great new report from Detroit Future City and Data Driven Detroit digging into what the rental landscape looks like in Detroit. Some other notable numbers in that report were that 93% of Detroit landlords own just one or two properties. And then I run this project on land speculators and tracking them year over year. They found 62% of Detroit landlords were not associated with some of that common bad actor or speculator behavior.
Right. So I want to talk about that a little bit because I think these numbers obscure something that we're not as familiar with, and that is some of these landlords like Mike Kelly who don't own rental property because they're so-called leasing to own it or selling it by way of predatory land contracts to consumers to evade rental regulations. At one point, Michael Kelly, 99.9% of his properties were leased to own properties or land contract properties. And so I think these numbers obscure the vulnerability and the risk factors facing folks. I've heard a lot of people who own properties and rent out properties saying, look, it's not that bad. But on this side of the street where I sit, looking at where people are living in slum properties, I know it is. And I know there's a big effort right now on part of many people who are investing in changes to our city processes to help get people out of these predatory land contracts, which are flooding the state, and also to regulate them, to tighten them up so that they are as regulated as for sale and rental properties. Leased to own properties are not regulated by contract law. They're not regulated by landlord-tenant law. And so I think the next thing I want to work with you on, Alex, is looking at the rest of that. Do you have any numbers on that? What percentage of people who are purchasing these slum properties, what percentage of those properties are being rented out? Because I was not able to get a good number. What percentage are being rented out and which ones are so-called being sold?
No, that is a good question. I don't know that they had that breakdown. And I know I've looked at that a long time ago, so things may have changed. But yeah, we could dig up that analysis and try to rerun it.
Yeah, I think it's important for us to get at that number, find out from even the 36th District Court, what percentage of evictions are people being evicted from properties that they purchased through land contracts or evictions from people who violated their lease. I think that we find that it's a bigger problem than we imagine. And I want to know, and I know we can't get to know that right away, but it just what looks like good news isn't good news when you look at the fact that most low-income people cannot afford to rent quality, affordable property. And, you see what some of it is, and you see what people are saying, and so I'm really curious about the rest.
Yeah.
Right, absolutely. And I think, yeah, that is as you say, that is a important caveat to these numbers is, this is what we can report on, but we know that there's so much in the housing space that is just not tracked anywhere.
Yeah.
Even trying to track evictions, we know that so many more evictions happen without filing an official court document, either from pressure or coercion. So there's
Yeah.
so much happening in the housing space that just there's no data to really look at. You've got to dig it out.
Yeah. Well, there's this one woman I worked with, and she was low income. She rented a house. She was homeless, and she rented a house from people. There was no sink and there was no toilet in the house. And the landlord said, "Okay, I'm not putting those in because they'll be stolen. But as soon as you move in, I'll install them." And he didn't. And she had 3 children, and so she was withholding rent, trying to demand he paid, and he had people show up in the middle of the night with baseball bats. Okay, and all I'm saying is that. And she had gotten some support from the state at that time, and the state said, "No, you misused you got evicted," because he went through the process of evicting her, and she could not qualify for future, support from the state. So I think having looked at the underside, working with people, we're going to talk about Kim and about the challenges we face in, just poverty in general. There's so much exploitation out there, deep exploitation in one of the poorest cities in the nation. And so my heart is always with those people who don't have options because I consider a safe, affordable domicile to be a human right, not a good idea.
Amen.
Yeah, this report from Detroit Future City, data-driven Detroit, and it was funded by the Rocket Community Fund, is online at DetroitFutureCity.com. If you look up 2026 Rental Landscape Report, you will find it. It is Understanding the Rental Landscape, a profile analysis of Detroit landlords. They say that it provides the most comprehensive and up-to-date analysis of Detroit's landlord landscape. Alex B. Hill of Detroitography, thank you very much. Yes. That was Detroit by the numbers.
Yes, and I might also add that Rocket is actually also supporting the effort to get people out of predatory land contracts because Rocket has recognized that as an issue. So I look forward to the data. Maybe we can talk to Rocket about supporting Alex to get that data for us or work with Detroit Future Cities to do the research.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Alex, for joining us.
Yeah, thanks so much.
All right. We are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk to Deputy Director for Prosperity for the Michigan Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity, Kim Trent. Applications have opened for the Eastside Community Network Summer Discovery Program. Designed for students entering 7th, 8th, and 9th grade in the fall of 26, this summer experience is a full-day in-person program that combines structured academic learning, hands-on enrichment experiences, and creativity to guide youth in developing life skills related to political and civic engagement, climate change, and environmental justice using art-based expression as a tool for learning and empowerment. The program runs from June 29th to July 31st from 8:30 a.m. to 5 o'clock p.m. Applications close on April 30th. For more details on how to apply, visit ecn-detroit.org/youth. Welcome back. You are listening to Authentically Detroit. We are here with Deputy Director for Prosperity for the Michigan Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity, Kim Trent, who is charged with guiding and building support for efforts to boost the economic security of Michigan citizens through policy, strategic initiatives, programs, and partnerships. Her leadership duties at LEO, that's the Michigan Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity, includes serving as the key staffer to the Michigan Poverty Task Force. She leads the department's Prosperity Division, which includes the Michigan High-Speed Internet Office, Office of Global Michigan Women's Commission, Michigan Community Service Commission, the Michigan STEM Council, and the Black Leadership Advisory Council. Kim, you also serve as the LEO's Equity and Inclusion Officer. Your career has included leadership roles on the staffs of Congresswoman Carolyn Cheeks Kilpatrick, U.S. Senator Debbie Stabenow, and former Michigan Governor Jennifer Granholm. For 7 years, Kim has held various key staff positions at Michigan Future Incorporated, a think tank dedicated to boosting prosperity in Michigan. She also serves as an elected member of the Wayne State University Board of Governors. You did that from 13 until 19, correct?
Right.
And you are here with us today. You are a native Detroiter with Michigan roots that stretch back to the 1830s.
Correct.
Trent, you hold a bachelor's and master's degree from Wayne State University.
Go Warriors.
You also completed graduate studies at University of Cape Town in Cape Town, South Africa. That was probably pretty cool.
It was amazing.
Yeah. Kim Trent has completed fellowships with the American Political Science Association in Washington, D.C. and the Michigan Political Leadership Program at Michigan State University, and is a graduate of the Detroit Regional Chamber's Leadership Detroit program. Kim Trent, welcome to Authentically Detroit.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Sam. Wow, I got to make sure I abbreviate that.
No. But people need to know that about
They
you,
do.
right? I think it's always good to know about the accomplishments of women such as yourself, that
Yes.
you are well versed and you've done a whole lot. You've been a whole lot of places. And this is not your first time on Authentically Detroit.
It's not. I'm actually, if I'm upset about anything, is that I'm not here more often. I would come every week if I could, or come every time you do a show, because it is such great information, such smart people asking good questions, and your audience is sophisticated. So I would come every day. If that were an option.
And what people don't know about you, I don't know if everybody knows you're a journalist.
Yeah,
by
I started my
training.
career as a reporter at the Detroit News.
Yep.
See, I used to brag about this because I thought it made me seem like I had gravitas, because my first job was covering the Young administration, right? So I used to tell people that, like, yes, now I'm like, okay, that just really makes me sound old. I gotta take that.
That's funny.
Wipe that out on my resume.
You know what? You just get used to it, because I was at the biggest surprise was when I was at the State of the City, and the principal of Mumford High School got up there and said, "I'm Nolan Proctor." I was like, "What the heck?" I remember when you were in high school with my kids.
I know.
And you're the principal. And I just immediately felt like I was 100. I was like, Nolan Proctor? His father, Fred Proctor, was the principal at Groves when my children went there. So yes, I'm settling into this, okay?
Kim, tell me what you learned at the news and probably what's different there now than it was when you were there.
So you know what? I was there at what I think was the peak of the Detroit News's influence for Black readers, because there was a man named Al Newhart.
It's never been higher with white readers today. I mean, they kill it with their Lansing audience.
Yeah.
I don't know if they serve a Detroit audience at this point.
Well, I hate to talk about my first employer, but I have to say, I'll just say this. It is actually owned again by Gannett.
Yes.
But when Gannett owned them the first time, Al Newhart was the CEO of Gannett. And for some reason, which one day I'm going to have to read a book or something about him to figure out why, but he was a white man who was very, very interested in DEI in the 80s. Like he was about, like, not just saying, oh, we need to get more people of color, like being very intentional, giving people bonuses for hiring people of color. So listen, I mean, we would kind of laugh because we had colleagues who had been very, very white, who all of a sudden started coming up with, like, Native American ancestry and stuff. It's like, oh, okay, you're not just white anymore. Great, But anyway, but we had so many people of color. Angelo Henderson, who, I know a lot of people still remember Angelo, who's such a great leader and just thinker in our community. But he and there's so many. I hate to start even dropping names. I worked with Betty DeRamus, who was one of the great writers and geniuses that Detroit has ever produced.
Right.
I worked with, so many people who are so smart. And we had the National Association of Black Journalists Convention in Detroit in 1994, and there's this very famous, the back cover of our program for that. There were like 35 Black reporters who were working there at the time. And now I don't know.
Darren Nichols will reference
was
this
a cover.
back
Yeah,
cover.
no, yeah, right.
I mean, I've heard of this back cover. I don't know if I've ever seen
I
it,
can't
but
now I'm
this
a
is like
horrible
a
pack rat.
legend.
It's somewhere in my house. I haven't seen it in a few years,
wow.
but when I ever find it again, I'm going to frame it because it was such a beautiful time. We had black editors and black photographers and black. You know who was a graphic artist at the Detroit News when I was a City Hall reporter? Charles Blow, the columnist for the New York Times, was a graphic artist at the Detroit News.
Wow.
He wasn't even a reporter.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah.
I used to love him.
Yeah.
He only made me mad one time.
Okay.
But yes, when he was saying that the Flint City Council was responsible for the water crisis, it was like,
did he say that?
He did. He, what happens.
That's
people,
very off-brand for him.
It is,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because I'm like a Charles Blow. I've read both of his books.
Oh, me too. I saw his opera in New York. I mean, at the Met. He there was a whole opera about based on his memoir that was incredible. That's disappointing. I have to go back and look at that.
I mean,
everybody
we are all
has an off
imperfect.
day, right?
I'm sure there's somebody who remembers something I said wrong and they'll never forgive me for it. So, but I am a Charles Blow fan.
Yeah,
I
me
say that
too.
to only say that I'm a big Charles Blow fan, and I didn't know he had Detroit roots.
Yeah. Well, that was one of his first journalism jobs was as a graphic artist at the Detroit News.
Now he's trying to get everybody to move back down
south. Yeah,
it's like, okay,
yeah, I don't know about that. I don't know. Yeah.
I get what he's saying.
I understand the point. I understand the demographics of it all, but yeah.
Well, understanding
I'm
the
good here in
demographics of it all, I want to talk to you about, the Detroit News and Free Press in its current iteration of these, what you're describing, right? 35 black. There aren't not 35
but
black journalists in
they're not
Detroit.
35 probably journalists at those
Sure,
papers
but editors
anymore.
and web developers and people that did the physical newspaper and
Right.
but
Now,
I mean,
will say the Free Press now, because I got to give a shout out to my sister, Nicole.
Yeah.
You talked about Darren Nichols, his lovely wife, who is a force of nature. Nicole Avery Nichols, who is the editor of the first black woman editor of the Free Press. And then they have James Hill, who is the top editor.
Hill.
So they do have.
They do, but there are 4 news reporters that are black people for the Detroit Free Press, and there are, I believe, even less at the Detroit News.
When you walk, there are fewer reporters.
There are.
Period.
And talk about that, Kim.
Has
Why
gone
is
down.
that?
Well,
there's black people here in Detroit.
Newspapers.
No,
right.
Newspapers. And so when it's,
I wish they did.
A matter of do we hire a city council reporter or do we hire an Oakland County reporter? They're going to go where the news paying audience is.
I think they're going to still hire a Detroit city. I think they still, particularly unfortunately in the wake of what happened in the early 2000s.
Is there any way that we can get Emil
2000s.
Elric to cover Oakland County? That would probably be such a relief. Like if you're going to cover the city, can you
Your
cover
very
the
good friend,
city?
Mr. Elric, right?
My very, very close.
Well, I'm bringing an actual real life. There is a reporter that, it's like you move from Denver, Colorado to go work for the Detroit News, and then you're telling all your friends, well, actually, I live 20 minutes outside of Detroit and never cover the city of Detroit ever.
Yeah.
Because that's what the Detroit News makes their money off of.
Right.
Because they don't make their money from Detroiters because they've never tried to
let me
target
give you a little
them.
history lesson because I knew this person.
Yeah.
And I didn't know about this until after I knew him as a human.
Yeah.
But there's a very famous memo that was written, I believe, in either the late 70s or the early 80s by a guy who, if you met him, lovely guy. But he explicitly said, we are only covering the suburbs, and the only time we're going to cover the city is when, it was, if it bleeds. I've never seen something like this put into writing, and it was so outrageously racist. And it was so disheartening for me because this is a person I knew, who I had a relationship, and to know that he harbored those kind of thoughts and that the institution would actually take that as a memo and take it kind of as a game plan for a while. That's why I'm so grateful for the time that I was there because I don't think it was performative. That's when the On Detroit section of the Detroit News started with Luther Keith and so there were a lot, but it's the history of African Americans.
Today the Free Press has Detroit
5 steps forward and 10 steps backwards.
Journalism has taken a step backwards.
Well, that's true.
Journalism is no longer what it was. I do want to acknowledge that, for example, Christine McDonald was at the Detroit News when she broke the story about overtaxation. A lot of people left the Detroit News and went to the Detroit Free Press because they felt there's more of a home. And then we
Or
lost
they've going
the
to-
amazing Kat Stafford
Yes,
to
she was-
Reuters. I mean, Kat was like a queen.
Absolutely.
On our show a lot, and she did so much good. We need more people in those spaces.
Right.
But when you have this contracted newsroom, I mean, I love people who work at the Free Press.
Me
when
too.
I go to the Free Press online, all I see are sports stories. It's like we
But
need to have more news
it's
stories.
what you're going to get eyeballs on. That's what they
That's what makes the
gotta.
money.
That's how they make the money.
and also, unfortunately, the things that arrive on the front page are the most popular stories. And so, if you go, you have to search for the news stories. I think that we need to change those metrics so that you're not just seeing the top stories, you're seeing important stories.
But I'm
because
sure whoever's doing the layout and figuring out, they're doing that based on what people are reading.
They are
Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, they are, yeah.
Exactly. That's what it is.
Yeah.
But I think, for me, for somebody who does not watch television news,
Yeah,
all I
I
have
don't
is
either.
newspapers.
Yeah,
and
me
so
too.
I'm
Me
like
too.
digging. And luckily, I have friends who work at various newspapers. Now Sam is at the Chronicle writing stuff, and Sam's always breaking his stories. But we have. I'm reading. Outlier. I'm reading Bridge Detroit.
Bridge,
There's actually an article in Bridge Detroit that highlighted our work in truck traffic and air quality today. So I read
saw
those
that.
Yeah, those-
stories. Planet Detroit. There's people doing good stuff, but you have to search for it.
Absolutely.
And I just think it's a shame that these two dailies are in the state that they're in today, that you have to have Bridge Detroits and Planet Detroits. Why are those journalists just
I
not
don't think
under?
it's. I think the good news is that it's opening up or democratizing how we get news.
It's a lot harder for us though, and
But it's-
being within the institution, it makes it a little easier for you to just
I'm not trying
to be a
trying
reporter.
to be funny, but not too long ago, I never read the Michigan Chronicle for news. I'm just being straight with you.
Sure.
Okay. The Michigan Chronicle has become a lot more newsworthy with you working there, number one, because you do write real meaningful news. And I appreciate and honor you for that. But also, to a certain extent,
Excuse me.
certain extent, there's a value in being able to get news from non-commercial sources.
Correct.
News
Yeah, I agree.
from nonprofit sources or less commercial sources where people are not driven by or controlled by moneyed interests in the same way. Information used to be filtered in such a way that even with the best people working in some of these newspapers, like you remember when we had the person who was overseeing the Free Press, I'm not going to name a name, but you know what I'm talking about, who was cheering on the bankruptcy and the emergency manager and saying, hey, this is a black person. But when you have people, we talk about black faces in high places, and the black faces in high places are not actually speaking on behalf of the man on the street, I think actually some of the news that we get now is better now that we have these other news sources.
Well, I know, my husband and actually my son now write for a publication called Michigan Advance. Well, my husband doesn't anymore, but he did at one point. But it's funded by philanthropy to offer news about state government from a progressive perspective. And, I think as much as we talk about how damaging it is that we have such polarization, we have overcorrected we're so afraid to just speak truth because you'll be accused. Truth is now seen as being biased against, fascism. Guilty as charged. I'm biased against fascism. But I think a lot of people who are in charge of decisions in our nation's newsrooms are so afraid of being accused of that. They're afraid to talk about the truth because the truth is so bizarre that, and we have the people who are decision makers and the people who are leading us that we don't. It's just a different world, and I think when we look at history and you think how did so many horrible movements that we've seen throughout history. And you think about how do regular people go along with it? Well, it starts with tearing down institutions first. That's the first step. And one of the most important institutions is the institutions that hold elected officials and powerful people accountable. And that's used to be the media. And I think it is to some extent. But I think, as you mentioned, some of these smaller publications, the Black press, the Michigan Chronicle has there's so much potential with the Black press to be that. When I worked on Capitol Hill, they called the Congressional Black Caucus the conscience of the Congress. We're always got to be the conscience of everything in our nation.
Well, yeah, I mean,
a lot of young Black people would completely disagree with that framing today.
Right.
Well, no, yeah, I don't think we should be, but I think that this is historically,
sure,
when you're looking at policy making and holding people and calling out, it was the Black Caucus on Capitol Hill that was doing that. That was saying, what you're doing here is going to hurt, older people. It's going to hurt people of color. And they were the only ones crying out.
I mean, I think that there's a lot of distorted information about history too, right? So I'll give an example. When they talk about the crime bill, the Black congressional leaders were all in favor and cheering on the crime bill. And the reality is they were really trying to create something else. And so the way that history, you can take something and you can distort it in a way that it doesn't always shed light to younger people on what was actually happening at that time and how things were really framed. You look at right now, some of the votes that happen right now, and people are just going around, they're grudgingly voting for certain things, thinking they're going to get political payoff. But you can't really say that the people who are voting in a lot of instances are the architects of the decision making, because it doesn't arise out of their caucus. And some of them, I disagree with their decisions, but there's a way of flattening everything. But I do want to say that Black press has always been important to Black liberation. That Black press is important to Black liberation because power concedes nothing without a demand. And that demand is not going to come from the people who are oppressing you. And Black press is different than having Black people working for white press, right? Because in a lot of instances, when you're working for white press, you are still expected to maintain a dominant narrative because racism is bipartisan, right? Racism is not about what your political identification is. It has everything to do with how you interpret other people's value and things. And people have to really work and struggle to be anti-racist, including Black people, right? It's a struggle for every one of us. And you have to fight it because it's so normalized inside of our culture. So I will always believe that it's important for us. You remember we listened to Black radio stations. We had WCHB. We had our talk radio. We've always had outlets.
Well, now we have, so when you talk about democratization, like I look at something like Contraband Camp, Michael Harriot, and just these brilliant, young, fresh, Michael Harriot, I'm not old. I'm not sure if he's young, but he's not, I don't know how old he is, but
Michael
his
Harriot.
perspective is young. He's thinking, he's bringing to the table, he's not afraid to talk about like tough topics. So, those are the kind of things that you would not have had access to before the internet. So those are the spaces that I'm really grateful for. And when you're talking about how intentional he is about platforming voices of people who would probably not have any other way to be heard. So I it could be so positive. Unfortunately, there's that downside to it too. And I don't mean about news gatherers, but the misogyny and the way that the algorithms drive you to like really negative spaces too. But I think these folks are doing God's work who are using these platforms to share perspectives that will not be platformed on any.
You can never say anything bad about Michael Harriot to me. Michael Harriot is amazing.
He is
Black
amazing.
AF History is one of the best books I've ever read.
I've chosen for my family. Donna and I are in a book club. I also have a cousin's book club, and I chose it for my cousin's book club last year, and I was the hero of the day because every single one of us read it or listened to it on like
listening
Audible
to it is
or whatever.
great.
No, but every single one of them went and bought a hardcover copy of it, and every single one of them went and bought it for their kids and stuff. So they were like, "Yeah, this book has impact. Like we got it. Yeah, that book is brilliant."
We need to have you read Black AF History?
I haven't. See, this is you say he's a younger audience, but he's 53
I don't know
years
that
old.
he's not. Yeah, I don't know.
So he's not my.
Right. No,
but he's.
You're right.
But he.
But I know what you're referencing. Yes, I've seen the cover.
If you have
I have
not
not
read
read
it, I encourage you to read it or listen to it. It is absolutely
It's
brilliant
brilliant.
and
It is
funny.
brilliant.
It is so much fun. We listened to it. Kevin and I were driving out of town, and we were just listening to it all the way. And we're like, when he's talking about the cookbook or whatever, and he's talking about soul food,
Right.
And he's absolutely brilliant, and he
brilliant and
refrained
hilarious.
and so funny. So I encourage it. And he does have a pretty young audience. There's a lot of younger people who he brings in. So I don't think age is a
Yeah,
number.
it's not. Yeah.
But it's also a mindset.
Correct.
He has a youthful
That's what I mean. He has a
mindset.
youthful. That's what I mean.
Exactly.
And I think also that some of that is born because a lot of his career he actually worked on college campuses. So I think when you're around young people, you do get the vibe. You get the. You could get their energy and kind of figure out what's important to them. So yeah, he is 53. But he's kind of an interesting character because he kind of has an old soul, but he also is very hip and of the moment. And
Exactly.
I just love that guy.
Yeah,
he's the best.
I love the Gullah Geechee part.
Yeah.
I love when he
Ooh.
describes it and when he uses the language and he really exposes you to a part of Black Southern history because I'm a Northern girl.
Right.
Your people have been here since 1830. I thought my
We've
people had been here for a
long
minute.
time.
But
Yeah.
I don't have any relatives down south.
I don't either.
Never have.
I don't either.
You just go across the city.
You know what? I have some who are going down there, but they have no family down there. But
Right.
they just, they want a warmer climate or whatever.
Right.
But like, they're not going down there to hook up with cousins, so and so, because we ain't got no cousins down there. All our cousins are in Michigan or around here. So yeah.
Same. Mm-hmm. So I encourage that.
Yeah.
But we need to talk about, because you made this turn from journalism to politics. And when I met you the first time, you were working for Governor Granholm. So talk about that U-turn or that slight turn. What was it like?
So actually, my first job in politics was working for Congresswoman Carolyn Kilpatrick on Capitol Hill. I was there doing the whole, God, I'm really aging myself. So I was there doing the Clinton administration. So I remember being on elevators where people had, like on a Friday night, everybody had a stack of papers this thick, and it was the Ken Starr report. They wanted to go home and read like the filthy parts of the Ken Starr report. So like I was on the Hill during some pretty interesting times. The first, when Newt Gingrich was there doing his horrible thing. So, I started there and then came back here, worked for her in her Detroit office, and then worked for Senator Debbie Stabenow, which was really such an important part of my career. I think that the growth I had from that experience really set the tone. Well, my grandmother was a social worker. She had she was an MSW, owned a mental health clinic, worked in the Detroit public schools as a social worker, and having a grandmother who's a social worker has really shaped.
Your dad's mother?
This is my mother's mother.
So it's on both sides.
On
that
both
you have
sides.
Clinical, because you're
my
going to talk
father
about your dad
was
in
a
a minute.
psychologist, yes. And so I come from a family where service is really important and where understanding, and I think I have always had, also, I should tell you, I grew up in Highland Park, Michigan, because that's an important part of my origin story. I grew up in, I was laughing when I was thinking about when you talked about trees, because when I grew up in Highland Park, it was called the City of Trees.
What street were you on?
I was on Louise. Okay. Louise between Woodward and 2nd. And I lived on a street where we had, the mayor lived on our street, we had professionals, we had a man who actually who picked up the garbage on our very street. We had people who worked in the plants. We had every kind of Black person there was. And when we first went, we were only the third Black family who moved on our street because we moved there fairly early. But it took until I was in my 40s to really understand how important having that mixture of different kinds of people who were educated, people who weren't educated, people who had, professional jobs, people who picked up garbage, but everybody. It was such a beautiful. That's the book I want to write one day.
I was like,
I would love to write that book.
I lived on Pennington.
Yeah,
and it was the same thing.
Yeah.
We had auto workers. We had some people, a teacher, bus driver, clerks.
Everything.
My next door neighbor was Dr. Slaughter. My dad was a doctor, and we all lived there, and it was like a storybook neighborhood. I absolutely loved living on Pennington. I was just telling my husband about it. But we also had like criminals, and their last name was Crooks. So
that's a little on the nose.
And so my sister, she was always a bully, right? And so she would always start to beat people up. And she was little, but she was really strong, and she could beat everybody up. And so, yes, so Betty Ann, who you know, Betty Ann was threatening somebody, my sister's going to beat your brother up. And they're like, okay. So my sister went out there with her fist, and they come up with a gun. So that was like the beginning of the breakdown of their relationship.
Oh my God.
But it was that thing, and and we had teachers, and so I went to Bagley Elementary. I walked to school.
Yeah,
my friend Julie's mother worked at the school. There were teachers. It was a very inclusive neighborhood, and I loved living there.
I am so grateful for my Highland Park roots. I mean, really, I'm always shocked when obviously Highland Park has gone through some really difficult times, but I'm always shocked when I tell people I'm from Highland Park, and they kind of, Highland Park, I'm like, my neighborhood was awesome. What are you talking about?
My brother-in-law lived on Eason.
Oh, yeah, that's the next block over from me.
He lived on Eason, just like about a block over from Woodward. And on New Year's Eve, his parties were legendary. He's Filipino, so they were like the Filipino family, the Guzmans who lived on Eason. And his Filipino aunts and mother, they have this spread of Patrick Lindsay is his best friend.
Oh, okay.
So they went to Michigan together. They're alphas. They were on the same alpha line, Ego One.
Yeah.
Yes.
Patrick grew up in Highland Park too.
Yes, that's what I'm
south
saying.
Side of town.
Well, they were best friends from high school.
Oh, okay, yeah,
and so that's where I met Patrick. P.O.
Yeah.
Right. So I have nothing but love, and then I had friends who lived on Moss.
Oh yeah,
and Second.
Oh yeah,
the Coldens.
Oh, the Coldens.
Yes.
He was my elementary school principal.
Okay.
And Kim and Kelly walked us to school. It was so wholesome when I was growing up. I lived on Louise, which was 2 blocks over from Moss. When I was in kindergarten, I walked by myself from Louise and then I would pick up Kim and Kelly, and they would walk me the rest of the way too. But when I think about it, I'm like, I would never have let my 5-year-old walk even 2 blocks. And, as a mother today, I remember reading Michelle Obama's book, and she talked about her mother gave her like an alarm clock when she was in kindergarten. It was like, okay, so from now on, it's on you. You're going to get up. And I was like, that's crazy. And then I thought about it, I was like, that kind of happened to me too. Now that I think about the latchkey generation. But and I mean, the Highland Park, it was a very charming experience I had. And it was a black city. Even though we saw it turn.
Now, I have to be honest, I was fascinated with Highland Park High School.
Yeah.
Because it had no windows.
Still am. I mean, it's a huge
building. But when I went in that
it's
building, but you don't understand.
Though.
It may have been awful. But when I went in Highland Park High School and had all those skylights and the plants and everything that, I had never seen a school with skylights. And so I know everybody talks about not having windows.
I didn't notice. Like a prison.
But it didn't.
From the street. I know from the inside it didn't. I know. I took driver's training there, so I took
driver's training there too.
Did you? Okay.
Well, I don't know if I finished there, but I went there for driver's training. I don't know how. But I went in and it just blew my mind. I was like, wow, this is so pretty. Right. And then afterwards I start, but everybody laughed at being the school without windows.
Right.
So many people I know went there, graduated from there.
Oh, yeah. A lot of very successful people.
Give me a picture of this school without windows, because I'm looking at the abandoned, people, the urban explorers. But is this what you're looking at?
Underneath these skylights, you had all this greenery right in the middle of the school.
It was. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so you're walking in, and there's like this green.
So it was like a mall.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was like
really
a big open space.
That's
Wow.
a really good point to say it was like a mall.
Yeah.
And so for me, I was at Mercy High School.
Right.
And Mercy had windows everywhere.
Right.
But we didn't have that greenery, the courtyard and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I thought it was fascinating.
I don't know if that was just a Highland Park thing, because our house to this day, like my father's apartment, his condo, just ridiculous amount of plants everywhere. I think that was kind of a 70s thing too. Which is a good thing, by the way. But yeah, every house that I can think of, even on my street, everybody had floor-to-ceiling plants, and
So my mother was like that, and Kevin is like that.
Yeah.
He grows everything.
Right.
But my mother we had a bay window in our dining room, and my mother built a box in front of the bay window.
Oh.
She put sand and dirt in the bay window, and we grew flowers there. It was like a greenhouse.
Oh, my
And then we
goodness.
had hanging plants over it. And so, that whole plant
Wow.
life.
Yeah.
And when we didn't even understand at the time the value of indoor air quality when
Yes.
you have that kind of plant
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
But we came from rural people.
Yeah.
We also, grew tomatoes.
Oh,
we grew
yeah.
cucumbers. We
We
strawberries.
never did not have. We always had
Yes.
a garden in our house in Highland Park. We always had. My parents grew corn. They grew green, just everything, every kind of plant that you can, or every kind of vegetable you can think of. Then they also had a flower garden, but they always had a vegetable garden. My father actually lived in a condo, and he made them get a vegetable garden in his condo building because he was. He's from Charlotte, Michigan, so he's from the country, and they grew everything that they ate pretty much. So
I want to come back when we have to take a break because I want to come back and I want to talk about how your childhood experiences, mine, in Detroit where it felt very much like it was a city on the rise, plays into your role on the poverty task force and where that motivation comes from.
Okay, I'd love to talk about that.
We'll be right back.
Interested in renting space for corporate events, meetings, conferences, social events, or resource fairs? The Stoudemire Wellness Hub and Match Detroit Small Business Hub are available for rental by members, residents, businesses, and organizations. We offer rentals for activities such as corporate events, social events, meetings, conferences, art classes, fitness classes, and more. To learn more about our rentals and reserve space, visit ecn-detroit.org/space rental.
Welcome back. You are listening to Authentically Detroit. We are here with Kim Trent. We want to talk, Kim, about what you do with the state, the Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity. When we went on our break just a moment ago, we were talking about Highland Park High School.
And just the childhood, this childhood, because I remember being happy I was not necessarily, I loved living in Detroit. I loved riding my bike. I ride my bike to Highland Park. I ride my bike everywhere. And there was this sense of a beautiful city that people outside of Detroit looked at as being, it was abandoned by white people, but we were still here. We enjoyed it. We were living in nice houses on nice blocks. And we're now living in a city where poverty has become concentrated and you don't have that same type of economic diversity.
Well, that's
on
what
blocks.
I was going to say.
Yes.
That's what I was going to say. I think that my origin story has kind of informed my approach to, because first of all, we live in a country that very much vilifies poor people. It's just been a part of the American narrative. You didn't try hard enough. You didn't do enough. You're lazy, and a lot of us have absorbed those messages, right? So there's this blame that goes on without looking at the picture of how society has been set up to make winners and losers. So when I got this opportunity to lead the state's anti-poverty work, with the Poverty Task Force, I think about, first of all, looking back now, I recognize that some of my peers growing up would probably be categorized as poor, but we didn't even have the language for it because they were just people. They were my friends. They were my friends' parents. And I just don't have that. I don't have that lens. And so the first thing I think we have to do is unpack why we have that lens and how wrong it is. Yeah. Because it's so much a part of who we are as Americans and our origin story and what we tell ourselves about what it means to be Americans. It's just like when people talk about race and the invisibility of privilege. It's the same thing with the invisibility of the privilege you have of not being a poor person in our society.
Absolutely.
And the way that we salve ourselves, whatever guilt that we may feel about it, is by saying some people deserve to be poor. And so now we have leaders who are forwarding that message again. I mean, we had people a long time where people maybe weren't saying it. It was just kind of the accepted truth. I was so excited to have a governor who said, let's talk about how we end poverty. Let's be intentional about it. Let's be intentional about raising income for people and lowering costs for people so that they can live with dignity and have quality housing. Like you said, housing is not some kind of privilege that somebody should have. It's an absolute human right. Good health care is a human right. She talked about race being a public health issue, the racism being a public health issue saying the things is revolutionary to just say the things. And so to devote money and brain power to addressing it, I thought was really important. And I'm really happy to see, with Mayor Sheffield being really intentional, bringing in people like Luke Schaefer and Benita Miller and, all these people who are nationally recognized experts who know how to, Luke Schaefer, who created RX Kids and all these other, who wrote these brilliant books. $2 a Day was one of the first books I read when I got this job, because it's like to recognize abject poverty exists where we live. Like, people are living in this, we have a safety net so that maybe we don't have people who have to, like, maybe you're not seeing what you would see in Calcutta or Lagos or, but people are still living in horrible conditions, and we have trained ourselves to look away.
We have people who live outside of safety nets. We have people living on the streets. We have people living in places right now where you theoretically have shelter. And Sam was looking, where was the apartment building that you went to, Sam, where the people had been thrown out and then they were let back in, but then they were pushed out again and they weren't allowed to get their things. And you went through there.
The Leland House.
The Leland House.
Oh, downtown.
Yes.
Yeah.
We have people living in places in absolute squalor. And so I was here one Saturday. And it was after we were closed. I was here with Kevin. We were bringing in the furnishings for here because we got to IKEA and we had some stuff we were bringing in here. And while we were here,
the place looks amazing, by the way. It really looks good. Your lobby and everything is looking really. Every time I come, it looks better and better.
Yeah. Well, and hats off to the team at ECN. But we were decorating the space, and I walked outside, and I saw this lady had a grocery cart, and she was standing at our door. Mm-hmm. It's Saturday. It's about 4:00. We have somewhere to be at 5:00. Mm-hmm. And she asked us if we have any food. And so, no, but let me find a place for you.
Right.
There were no places that fed people until Monday morning. Do you know how it felt to watch this woman? So, you have to give her some money, because without that, she's not eating until Monday morning.
Yeah.
And so what do people do? They end up going through garbage cans and things like that, trying to live, and we pretend like we don't see it.
Yep.
Right.
There's people who are going to the store and feeding themselves with dog food and cat food because that's the food that they can afford. And so I think if we understand the dimensions of poverty that we have here and be a little bit less congratulatory about the fact that there are safety nets, because everybody's not safe inside of those nets.
But what's happening, first of all, you're right. Our safety nets, we did a whole report about TANF, how TANF dollars are used in Michigan. So we know we had, quote unquote, welfare reform that radically undermined any kind of safety net aspect that you would have with how TANF dollars are distributed. And then state of Michigan leaders said, hold my beer, we're going to make it even worse here. So, horrible restrictions that were put on by the federal government, we came in and made it even harder for people to get the help that they need, to get it for as long as they needed it, to not have to jump through 1,000 bureaucratic hoops to get it. I mean, we have created a system that is designed for people to not get help, really, to be honest with you. So one of the things that the Poverty Task Force did was commission a report from the University of Kansas, and I don't think anyone who's been watching would be surprised by the findings. There are policy decisions. Again, these are decisions that we're making.
They were extremely surprising. Come on, Kim. Share some of the findings.
Well, just that, there's tremendous need among young people, but they're the least likely to get help, the help that they need. Older people, older Michiganders are not getting help. The bureaucratic nightmare that we've set up to make, and by the way, what's happening with the federal government now, it's going to make it 1,000 times worse.
So let's talk about TANF for a minute. Temporary aid for needy families. I started working at Warren County Development Coalition, which is this organization in its old name.
Sure.
Like me, it's had a couple names, changes. When I worked here in 93, 86% of income qualified families could get aid to dependent children. It was not enough, but they had access to it. Right now, it's something like 13% of income qualified families
Correct.
are receiving those types of benefits. So welfare is and the benefit amounts have not changed substantially since 1993. And
We
so,
had a bit of a bump in the last couple years, but before that, it was like you said, it was the 90s. Now, just imagine if you were living, well, you weren't even born probably, but you just imagine if we were living off the same budget that we had in 1994, just in your own personal life.
you go back and you look at, because I always do the number, you always have to like do the inflation adjustment.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
Because a lot of times, like, certain things don't make sense. But I want to go back to the TANF piece because I learned through working and being on your advisory committee what percentage of federal TANF dollars has gone into helping needy families.
Yeah.
What's the
less?
percentage?
Yeah, less than that actually goes in. It's less than 6% that's actually going to.
What percentage? I'm sorry.
6. That it's actually
6%.
going to people to help them.
6.
So a lot of it is going. Yeah. Oh yeah.
6%. I want
Yes.
people to hear that
Yeah.
number.
Yeah.
We're spending money on TANF. Where's the rest of it going?
So administrative costs for a long time, and this is one thing that I'm proud of. We had something called merit scholarships in the state. And all you had to do was get a good score on a standardized test. Now, who's more likely to get that? Those are people who live going to school in West Bloomfield and in these high. So so that's considered. So they were taking money from TANF, which is meant for the neediest people in our state. That money was being diverted to very rich people so they can go to college wherever they wanted to go. You didn't have to go to school in Michigan. So if you wanted to go to Yale and your parents were billionaires, they could get dollars from merit scholarship. Those are how we were diverting those dollars.
What about other dollars?
Job
training?
So well, there was some with that, but then also we diverted a lot of the money to things like when child protective services and those kind of things, those kind of services. So dollars that that used to be kind of general fund dollars, they said, it just became kind of where people would just pick for a whole bunch of different kinds of.
So child protective
purposes.
services, that is akin to having the dollars meant to keep people in their homes used to demolish homes. To spend money that was meant to keep families intact.
Yeah.
On programs designed to remove kids or monitor kids for removal.
Yeah.
Feels like it is actually reversing the purpose of those dollars.
Absolutely.
And it is destabilizing families because we know families need to live. And we know that in this time frame, basic needs like water has become more expensive and we have these water shutoffs. And if you have a child and you cannot afford water, what's likely
then
to
your
happen?
child is going to get removed in all likelihood.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then,
so we
heat
have
and
criminalized
electricity.
poverty for sure. So
Yes.
that's another thing. So yeah, you're right. It definitely seems if you're going to be charitable, probably not the best way to spend money, but really, if you're being honest, it's actually the worst way when you're thinking about kind of strategies to end poverty. Or, for example, one of the things that we did with our TANF dollars, for example, we made it so punitive. So for example, if you have 3 meetings with your caseworker that you missed or that you're late, well, I think it was missed, you would be banned from getting TANF dollars forever from the state of Michigan. Now, think of all the reasons why someone who is low income might miss a meeting. Right. Lack of transportation, lack of job flexibility, like being able to get time off or to take all of these things, illness, sick child, all of these things that could, and so if you make a choice that this other thing is more important, you are risking your child and your family being able to get. And mind you, as you mentioned, the way the dollars are allocated, it is anybody who thinks people, the whole welfare queen trope, thinks that people are using dollars from TANF to get rich. man, you haven't looked at those dollars lately.
Right.
They're getting nothing. Nobody could just live off of just TANF. Like, very few people would be able to do. Or if they did it, they're living in substandard housing. They're living with barely being able to buy enough food. They're struggling.
You know, I have this dream television show, Survivor, where all of the people who talk about poor people are given TANF dollars and told they have to survive for 3 months, okay?
Yeah.
That idea is so exciting to me. I want you to see how you can do it, because you got to, heads off to
That'd
parents.
be a great show.
It would be a great show, and it would possibly change public policy. Hats off to those people who don't understand how brilliant some mothers have to be and fathers have to be just to navigate these systems so their children can eat and have medical care and the things that they need. We minimize their struggles. And one of the challenges is narrative. And again, this goes back to the importance of Black press.
Yeah.
This goes back to the importance of storytelling, because without the right storytelling, what ends up happening is the reason these people are poor is because their parents are using their money to buy weed and hair weave, and that's the reason why these kids aren't eating. I remember when the late, ungreat Bill, well, he's still alive, when Bill Cosby was started his respectability tour.
Oh, yes.
And he was like, he remember his saying, the poor are letting down our communities. And he was coming out there and saying, you know, these people are buying they need to buy hooked on phonics, but they're buying these gym shoes for their kids. And at the time, I'm working in the North End with kids who don't have coats warm enough to keep them warm. They're not wearing designer coats.
They don't have.
So I'm taking my kids, and we had this opportunity to go to Seldom Blues, and Alexander Sanjay gave us tickets.
Oh, nice.
And so, of course, I bring my kids, and I remember Camille had a baby fat jacket on, and the kids who I was working with looked at her with so much just envy. Like, oh my God, how do you have that? And I felt so incredibly guilty for my daughter having a baby fat jacket, and these kids didn't. And I didn't even buy that for her. Her stepmom did, but regardless, she had it. And my kids had the proper clothing, and they didn't. And at that same time, here's, you know, Bill Cosby
blaming
contributing to this narrative. And when it's us saying that about our own people, then it makes that narrative that much more believable. So I have to say that when his downfall came, I was not one of the people who cried for him. Not for that and many reasons. I felt like, you know, popularizing these myths about poor people is so damaging. I know even back, we're talking about 2004, 2005, kids who lived in houses without heat. Kids who had never been to the doctor. And the amount of suffering young people. I used to go home, drive home from work, and feel guilty for being warm inside my house because there were people who were not. And so, and at that time, you couldn't even say the word poor.
Right. Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Unless you wanted to put them down. And so we're now here, it's 2026. And you've been doing this for 6 years, and you have some things that you have been able to do in your role. Now, you haven't fixed poverty, but you've done some things. Talk about what you've done.
So I think one of the most consequential changes that we have is the earned income tax credit, which we had a match when it was originally introduced in the early 2000s of it was 20%. And then when the Snyder administration came in, they bumped it down to 6%. And so we actually, when we first came in, that was one of the first things we said, like, we got to get that back up to 20%. We got to fight for it. And I have to tell you, not everybody was a big fan of that idea because, you know, budgets have to be balanced. And, that's, you know, is that a priority? Yes, it is a priority. We got to do it. And we ended up, there was a coalition of a number of external partners who fought for it, working with us, working with people inside of state government. And that was one of the first bills when we had when I say we, I mean, I am a Democrat. So when there was this trifecta where we had both the governors, we had the governor and the House and the Senate. One of the very first bills they passed was boosting it up to 30% of the federal EITC. So that was huge. That was a huge game changer. It has really had great impact. RX Kids, which Mayor Sheffield is bringing to Detroit now, but started in Flint. Using TANF dollars to support, and, obviously philanthropy got involved too, but to support the idea that we know that the first year of a child's life is the most important time, a woman's pregnancy. We know that we have terrible Black both infant mortality and maternal death rates are just off the charts. And so we know that money, everybody's like, oh, money doesn't solve everything. Well, money solves a lot. If you have access to be able to go to the doctor, if you have access to be able to get good quality food, if you have the ability to have transportation, those are things that are going to contribute to you having a healthier pregnancy and for your child's first year of life to be a healthier and better time. And so to have RX Kids supported, that was something that we were very supportive of, and seeing that it's going to other communities now is really very gratifying. The fact that every school child in Michigan now has access to free breakfast and lunch, which sounded like a pipe dream a few years ago, but it's something we've now had for 3 years.
And now Republicans are trying to take that away.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, they're gonna. I mean, it's always a fight. It's always a fight. So
from the rich kids, they don't want the rich kids to have, because that's a waste of money to them. They didn't go through the school at the time. But
there's not a district in Michigan where that is all rich, and that's the thing that they don't understand. They don't understand the shame that people who really rely on those meals to be able to eat.
As a person who used to manage schools, I can tell you that a large proportion of people do not complete the free and reduced lunch applications because they're afraid of the government intruding on their lives. And so you have a whole lot of kids who qualify, but who don't have it. And so I think that, and then you have kids who aren't eating at home.
Oh, yeah.
If the breaking bread and giving people food is like if that's the most harmful thing you can do, it's so crazy to me, because we have no compunctions about going to war and just bombing the hell out of people's lives and stuff like that. And it's like, we can always find money for that. I need trillions and trillions of dollars to go to war.
Right.
Your argument talking about the sort of social stigma around it is something that often gets brought up by advocates. When I went to elementary school in 2005, I remember that was a big, it was a social stigma. You were labeled by your fellow first and second graders as to who goes in line before the sort of majority of the kids in Midland, Michigan, who didn't qualify for free or reduced lunch, but it was certainly a top of mind social stigma among peers. And so that has been eliminated.
It has been. And it's a good thing. It's a very good thing. So, I mean, all of the innovations that I think we fought for over the last 6 years are in danger of just being wiped off because so much of the money that we get is from the federal government. There's so many stipulations that this leader in Washington has put on how we use those dollars.
Define leader.
Well, that I definitely meant quotation marks around that word.
But you know what I'm hoping?
Yeah.
I'm hoping that group of people who are supporting these things are in danger. I know they think that by stopping Black folks and Hispanic people from voting, but I have a hard time believing a lot of this is popular among the people they consider their base. There's just too many things and too much suffering going on. And that's the only way we're going to stop this, is to get people more aware, more conscious, and when it's hitting them in the same way. I mean, you have the threats to Medicaid and Medicare are not hurting urban poor people as much as they are rural poor people.
Absolutely.
And those are your base.
And by the way, most of the very poor counties in the state of Michigan are rural counties. Right. I mean, rural poverty is a real problem in our state. And there is this definition. When people think about poverty, they have a very definite idea of what poverty looks like. And it looks like us, the people in this room. It looks like meaning, Black people and women. And I mean, all of the stereotypes that go back to Ronald Reagan and welfare queens and this idea. And that is not the reality. That is not not the face of poverty.
Every single, upper middle class, wealthy community, every single one has neighbors who are poor,
Absolutely.
in poverty, are low income, however you want to describe it, from Midland to Grosse Pointe Park to West Bloomfield to Traverse City and so on.
Absolutely.
and
But
so
then
forth.
and then you go to places like Baldwin, Michigan, which is
Oh,
right
yeah.
next to Idlewild.
Idlewild.
Okay, so growing up, we went to Idlewild, and Kevin and I went to a jazz festival in Baldwin, Michigan. And I'm like, do they have grocery
Lake
stores
County,
anywhere?
one of the poorest
There's
counties in the
there's
state of
no
Michigan. It's always in the top
grocery
3.
stores.
Yeah.
It's like everybody's eating out of dollar stores. I was like, if I ate at dollar stores, I'd be angry too. And you're driving through these parts and you can't get cell phone signals anywhere. Well, I can't get a cell phone signal. You don't have access to basic things. And I'm looking at these people living in trailers stuck behind trees, and they got these American flags there because they believe in a lot of instances the reason they're so poor is because people in Detroit are getting everything. And one of the reasons they're so angry is they believe that they've been cut out of the American dream and that we are living it. And in a lot of instances, we believe they're living the American dream. If we could only see each other. One of the things we've talked about is doing the kind of work where you're going out into various communities and helping build awareness, not political awareness, but just awareness about what's really happening in our state. Where is that going right now? What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think so. One of the programs that I manage also is the Office of Rural Prosperity. So they have, I think the leaders of that group, one of the things that we do is we work on the ground with these rural communities and have them identify what are the things. So, there's some communities that don't have high-speed internet or don't have, and they get to decide for themselves what are the things that we need in our community. And then we don't just throw money at the problem, but we give them resources. We give them technical assistance. We give, but one of the things we do is we often connect them with urban folks so that they understand, so they can learn from what we've already learned. We've been in laboratory maybe a little bit longer for this anti-poverty work. And I think that those are the kinds of connections when you have leaders in those communities who are learning from leaders in our community. Those are the kind of things that I think will help us build with, and just having the conversations, even among our when I talked about the earned income tax credit, we brought the corporate sector into that conversation because once they really realized this is an incentive to work. Because you only get the earned income tax credit if you earn income. So, people sometimes have to see what's in it for them. But sometimes you will occasionally run across somebody who does have empathy. I mean, that does happen occasionally. So, but they're not going to have empathy if they don't know, And so I just think having the door open so you can always have conversations, even with people who you would assume would not necessarily have empathy for the people you're advocating for.
Yeah, Kevin and I were in Newaygo in 2020, and everybody was super friendly. There was this one lady who she was in a wheelchair, and she chased him through the grocery store to tell him he was an angel. Some old white lady. They chased him, you're an angel. Nobody was rude to us.
Yeah.
Everybody was nice.
Yeah.
It was not interpersonal hostility.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
The hostility comes from a lot of times miseducation, misinformation. And the more that we can humanize each other, I'm an optimist who just believes that most people have goodness inside of them.
I think so too.
And when they aren't showing empathy, it's because they don't understand the issues.
Right.
When you talk about teaching people rural, when I was in Idlewild, my grandmother lived up there for a few years, and so she would take us around, and they were like farm stands. We go get our eggs from somewhere, and we get our tomatoes from somewhere, and so we ate, from people growing things around there.
Yeah.
I didn't see any farm stands, and that's the thing that got me. Like, we have urban agriculture. Sometimes we need rural agriculture, not corporate farms, but places where poor people in rural communities are growing their own food so that they can eat fresh foods, because it is literally, I cannot imagine wanting to live in a place where everything comes out of a can or freezer.
It's counterintuitive too, because when you think of rural, you think of access to fresh food and that kind of stuff. But you're right. Sometimes it's the exact opposite because they don't have a system to distribute those fresh foods and vegetables and people aren't able to make a living maybe necessarily with it, or the land is used for these mega farms, so they're not like the family farm where you're just going out and you're selling your peaches or you're selling your plums or your carrots or whatever. They're becoming fewer and farther between.
Yeah, so it's like sort of like international aid. When I was in high school, we had this class called social consciousness. And in social consciousness, that's where we learned about baby formula and how certain companies were going into at that time, they called them third world nations. I think they call them developing. In other words, places that white folks exploit around the world, and selling them baby formula, infant formula. And so the women's milk would dry up, and then they were dependent on infant formula, but they couldn't afford it, so they were watering it down. It was contributing to child hunger. We create dependencies. And when you create those types of dependencies, then people lose the capacity to do it for themselves. Again, in Detroit, we grew food. We ate food in our garden. We could afford food. My mother just preferred the food
fresh
she
because
ate.
it tastes better.
Exactly.
It tastes better and it's better for you. Yeah.
That has become, and then I had children and I wasn't growing stuff. Okay, I'll admit I was not as good as my mother at those things, right?
Right.
I should have kept that practice up.
Yeah,
and
that's something I feel a lot of guilt about too, that I haven't done it. Yeah.
So now, my children are having to learn for themselves things. We failed to pass on generational lessons because we thought, well, I'll just go to a grocery store. And when the grocery store is dried up, then we are now dependent on something that's no longer there as a resource.
Right.
And it has nothing to do with land. And you go to a lot of now, whatever we call them, developing nations, same thing. People are hungry, but they could grow their own food.
I just watched a video about chow chow. Like my grandmother made chow chow, which was like this pickled vegetable kind of, And my grandmother canned like crazy. Like she canned her whole life, like, until she died. I don't know that anybody from my generation really does that. And when you just think about how it is a skill that would, if we had it, I mean, the way you could preserve good, high quality, dense food, and we just lost that. We lost that as an ability to really feed our families in a way that was really responsible. You inspired me. I should tell you, we had a conversation. You serve on our advisory council for the Poverty Task Force. So one of the things that we are talking about is innovate. How do you innovate in a time of crisis like we're in right now? And so I don't know if we're going to go with this title, but we actually want to do a half-day summit on it. And one of the ideas that one of the names that I thought about is building in the backlash. Because in the history of Black people in this country, it's been like a decade or two of progress and then like 60 years of backlash. And so we're in the backlash now, right? But we still have to be, and we're in backlash. To be honest with you, I feel like I'm pretty savvy about the history of race in this culture, but I'm not going to lie. I was not prepared for Donald Trump. I just did not. Just the naked racism and I just did not see that coming. I'll be honest. I did not. I certainly am not naive about the fact that racism has always flourished and white privilege flourished. But I never thought I'd see the day where we have a president who's, displaying images of a past Black president as a primate and that kind of
What
stuff.
if I told you it was only going to get worse and worse as we go on?
But that's what we're in the backlash.
I'm saying my peers, when I grew up in Midland, right? Yeah. I felt it. And so this surprise, this shock is just like, this is how white people are.
But this is a thing that happens in history. And as a poli-sci major, let me just bring some of those dust off that,
Right.
History goes in 100 years ago, Hoover was president. Hoover was racist as hell.
Yes, he was.
We had Hoovervilles. We had no social programs. People were starving, whatever. And Hoover produced FDR.
Right.
And the New Deal.
But that's the point I was going to make. You actually I did a whole speech based on a conversation you had when you were bucking me up one day where I was just like, oh, we're going to get through this, where you talked about the growth that came out of these periods of deep desperation and how those were laboratories for innovation. And so that's why we want to have that conversation now, because, it's easy to fall into a feeling of hopelessness. I mean, just because, certainly this isn't the first time that we've experienced lack in our country. But most of my life, we have been in a period of, where you saw African American. I mean, we've always had issues. And growing up in Detroit, like you said, I had tremendous pride about growing up in the city. People who aren't from here might look at, it was crack dens. That's not the Detroit. That's not what I think of in Detroit. I think of power. I think of influence. I think of intellectual. Just when you think about people like James and Grace Boggs, and my grandfather, who had a high school education, is one of the most brilliant people I've ever met. Who sat on a bar stool and just was dropping knowledge to everybody, and it's because he read the paper every day and he read books and he knew about stuff, and so I never had a perception of Detroit as being an inferior place ever. I never thought that way. Growing up in Highland Park, living in Detroit, and so I look at what you said now, where we don't have that diversity, not just of, I think the things that worry me more about Detroit, certainly the poverty and the lack of, where we see the homeowner rates have declined over several years. I know they said they bumped up a little, but not just those trends that great organizations like Detroit Future City are tracking and doing a beautiful job of doing, but the culture of this town has changed a little bit. I feel like the heritage of activism, the history of activism has been neutered a bit in a way. I think it still persists. Don't get me wrong. We have great, but I think having grown up in a city with an unapologetically Black mayor, leadership, and it's not even just about color. It's not just about color. It's about perspective. It's about being the birthplace of the Shrine of Black Madonna, the birthplace of the Nation of Islam, the place where Dr. King gave the "I Have a Dream" speech first. The place there's so much.
Malcolm X,
Ballad of the Bullet. Yeah, I don't want to be like that old lady who's like, oh, back in my day. I don't want to be that person.
Yeah.
But I think that there's a shift, and I don't know if it's the result of having felt disenfranchised by things like emergency management. There are a lot of things that happened that I think have contributed to it. I think it still persists among some of us, but I don't feel that same Detroit.
In terms of what it has shifted to, though, is there language behind that?
I think that there's really a lot of promising things, like Juwan Howard and the Howard Family Bookstore, right? Juwan just bought a block. Like Page's Bookstore. What is the guy's name who opened Page's? These are young people. Those are young people.
Yeah, one of the owners goes to school with my 12th grader.
I'm interested, though. Right. Has it shifted to something that you're able to describe? Like, is there a word for what it is that it's shifting to? Is it a more capitalistic, entrepreneurial? Is it more conservative than it was?
I think that what happened is there's a shift in population. Mm-hmm. A lot of the people who were the most active and politically elite now live in the suburbs. They've moved out. And so you've lost a prior power base that you used to have, and you have a group of people, many of whom have never had access to power. But let me lift them up, right? Because we do have a mayor who's black. Oh my goodness! When I was at the State of the City and we were listening to gospel music, I was like, I know this is wrong, but it is gospel. This feels right to me. There was this unapologetic mindset in that room, and I have not felt it since Coleman Young. I'll be honest with you.
Well, that's what I'm happy that you're.
She's a young woman, and she's surrounding herself with a lot of young people. Juwan Howard, Dr. Chanel Hampton are in her administration. And these are people who've been in the trenches. And so I think two things happened. When you stayed in Detroit, and you stayed whatever, and you stayed who you are, but there's a whole lot of people who are our friends and sometimes relatives who got a mindset of, I no longer have to care about being black because I have arrived, and my children have arrived. And this assimilationist mindset. A lot of assimilators woke up and was like, oh my goodness, racism exists. I'm black again. And so I'm also seeing a return to a lot of the activism because, I've always been too black for most of our friends. Okay? I happened? I'm just too extreme. And I'm like, oh my God, not Donna. And now they like me, kind of. You know, maybe they don't want to hang out with me, but they at least want to listen to what I have to say. You know that there was a time when they would just, oh God, there she goes again, Angela Davis. And it was minimizing these conversations because people wanted to believe, and why wouldn't they? That they were living in a world that had become fair, that everything our parents and grandparents had fought for had succeeded. Now we have a black man in the White House, and we've been able to get places, and it's easy sometimes to turn your back on the people.
Especially when you've been taught that your conditions are a result of things that you've done, not that there has been a conscious effort to lock you out of the American dream. So if you believe it's our fault, then it is depressing.
If you believe that I am responsible for my success, I'm self-made, and I did the right things, and if you just do what I did, you can be where I am, which is the lie we tell people. If you believe that Cass Tech makes you smarter than Cody, and that makes you smarter, you talked about your grandfather having a high school education and being the smartest man. If you believe the narratives around white supremacy and then black people following in the shadows of white supremacy, and we're almost there. Right.
But that's why, when I talk about my origin story about having grown up in Highland Park around the garbage man who loved jazz and exposed me to jazz, and the factory workers who, there was wisdom everywhere. And so I think having grown up with this brilliant grandfather who didn't go past high school, I recognize, first of all, I could never be a snob, no matter how successful. I'm not wired that way. And I think that the only thing I'm snobby about is snobs. Like, I can't stand snobs. They make my skin crawl. So I think that when I say that Detroit has changed, I don't think we have more snobby people here. I think the snobby people have decamped, right? Like you said. And the people who have left, I think so many of them are just, I remember there was this book called The Habit of Surviving. It's so difficult to just live your life day to day. Maybe you don't have the bandwidth to also be out there. But I think that you're right. There's
also the delusion, okay? We have a lot of people sending their kids to suburban schools and saying, we've made it. And their kids are facing racism inside of schools, and they come home and they tell their mom, that's racist. Don't say it's racism. It's you. You need to work, and we need to overcome it. And so there's a lot of collective denial that has been going on that I understand and empathize with, but I think denial is actually coming to an end because more and more people are afraid of what's happening, and people are waking back up. And now is a time for us to come together around some positive messaging, to be forgiving of people who didn't want to believe they had to still deal with racism, because who wants to?
Right. And hopefully this show can be a vehicle to do that.
Well, that's one of the things we try to do, right?
We do. We want to take a little break, and we're going to come back, and we're going to do shout outs to close it out.
Calling all residents and lovers of the East Side, the Spring Stoudemire Showcase on April 16th is your invitation to come in, get connected, and discover all that the Stoudemire Wellness Hub offers for Eastsiders. Experience the space, meet staff and instructors, and learn more about programs designed to support everyday life. Whether you're looking for health and wellness resources, opportunities for your children and family, or ways to stay connected and engaged in the community, join us on April 16th and see why the Stoudemire is the place to be.
Applications have opened for the Eastside Community Network Summer Discovery Program. Designed for students entering 7th, 8th, and 9th grade in the fall of 26, this summer experience is a full-day, in-person program that combines structured academic learning, hands-on enrichment experiences, and creativity to guide youth in developing life skills related to political and civic engagement, climate change, and environmental justice, using art-based expression as a tool for learning and empowerment. The program runs from June 29th to July 31st, from 8:30 a.m. to 5 o'clock p.m. Applications close on April 30th. For more details on how to apply, visit ecn-detroit.org/youth. Welcome back, everyone. You are listening to Authentically Detroit. We are here with Kim Trent, the Deputy Director for Prosperity for the Michigan Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity. Kim, thank you for joining us on this terrific conversation. It does come through that you guys have known each other for years.
This is our everyday, like over the telephone, over a meal.
See, you're truly hearing the behind the scenes. This is the raw and the real conversation. That is why this show is called Authentically Detroit. We want to thank you all for listening in. If you have topics that you want discussed on Authentically Detroit, you can hit us up on our socials at Authentically Detroit on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, or visit our website at authentically-detroit.com. All right. Now, every week we do a shout out period portion of the show. Donna, as tradition, let's start with you. Who do you want to shout out and lift up and sing the praises of?
Shout out Madam Mayor Mary Sheffield. You made me proud. You did us proud last week. I just could not believe, not just my response, but everybody's response. People who I thought had sold out came back and they said things. It was just beautiful to have somebody as mayor saying things like every neighborhood deserves investment. She actually said housing is a human right. The mayor of Detroit said housing is a human right. You don't change things by saying them, but you don't change things if you're not willing to say them. You cast a vision, and that vision becomes the North Star that you're moving towards. And I felt really, really connected to that work. And I'm just so proud of her, a young Black woman in Detroit who has earned her space and earned her place as the leader of our community, also because she is young. And I know she's not young to you, Sam, but she's certainly young to me. She's younger than any mayor other than Kwame Kilpatrick in my lifetime. And unfortunately, he was not equipped for the job, but she is, I think.
She is. I agree. I'm incredibly proud of her and proud of she just came out the gate so strong. She set a tone. She's not being an incrementalist. She's bold in a way that I think we haven't seen that in a while, that kind of boldness. And to be a Black woman, and listen, just look at the list of Black women mayors that we've had in this country and the length of their tenure. I mean, they are facing serious they face the kind of scrutiny that I don't think other leaders face. And she's unafraid. And I think there's something to be said for that in this context, because she's got to know, we live in a country that's pretty sexist, as the 2016 and 2024 elections, I think, really taught us in a way that I couldn't predict it. And the fact that she's come out with this bold agenda, with saying, I care about Detroit's children, they're my priority. I'm going to have people who are intentional about solving poverty. We're not going to just say we can't handle housing. Housing is a huge, difficult issue. To even say you're going to work on it takes a lot of guts. So I agree with you. She definitely deserves a tip of the hat.
I want to shout out journalist Ested Herndon. He just launched his new America Actually video podcast show. Ested is from the Chicago area. I got to know him a little bit when I was at Axios through the NABJ conference in Chicago. That was downtown that year. Oof, a lot of fun. That was the same year that Trump spoke. That was 24. So it was during the campaign there. But I had met Ested when he was at the New York Times. He is now at Vox. You can check out his new show, America Actually, on YouTube and across social platforms, audio as well. Shout out to you, Ested Herndon. Kim, you want to give us a shout out?
I think I'm echoing Donna's shout out for our mayor and just her. Again, I just think the fact that she has not tiptoed into office, she jumped in, made bold policy decisions, put really talented people in really important spaces. I am very impressed so far with her leadership.
We want to thank all of you for listening in and supporting our efforts to build an authentic platform of authentic voices for real people here in the city of Detroit. please like, rate, and subscribe to our podcast on all platforms. We will hear from you guys next week. You can see from me and Donna here at ECN. Come on by. Stop by.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks for listening.